The storm raged over Hawkins, a relentless downpour that turned the familiar woods into a labyrinth of shadows and fear. Rain lashed against the thin yellow jackets of 3 boys, their flashlight beams cutting desperately through the inky blackness. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas pushed onward, their bikes abandoned somewhere behind them. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a twig underfoot, sent a jolt of nervous energy through them. They shouted Will's name until their voices were raw, the sound swallowed by the thunder and the howling wind. It felt hopeless, a search for a ghost in a haunted forest. The Mirkwood of their Dungeons & Dragons campaigns had sprung to life, but this was no game. Their friend was gone, and the darkness felt alive, watching them. Just as their spirits were about to break, a new sound pierced the storm's fury, a snapping branch, closer this time, and too deliberate to be the wind. Their flashlights whipped around, beams converging on a single point, and there she was. A girl standing at the edge of the tree line, appearing as if summoned from the storm itself. Her head was shaved, and she wore a strange, oversized t-shirt that looked more like a hospital gown. She was drenched, shivering, and her eyes were wide with a terror that seemed to go far beyond being lost in the woods. They were huge dark pools reflecting the frantic dance of their flashlights, holding a story of unspeakable trauma. She didn't say a word, just stared, a fragile phantom caught in their light. Lucas and Dustin were instantly wary, their instincts screaming that this was wrong, that this girl was trouble. But Mike, he saw something else. He saw fear. He saw a kid, just like them, who was lost and needed help. Back at Mike's house, the warmth of the basement was a stark contrast to the cold, wet night they'd left behind. The girl sat huddled in a blanket, still shivering, still silent. Mike, trying his best to be a good host, offered her a set of his own clothes, a striped polo shirt and some corduroys. As he handed them to her, he noticed the strange tattoo on her wrist, the numbers 011. It wasn't a name, it was a brand, a label. What did it mean? He tried asking her name, pointing to himself and saying Mike, then to Dustin and Lucas. She just stared blankly. The boys argued in whispers. Lucas was convinced she was a mental patient escaped from a nearby asylum, a danger they needed to report immediately. Dustin, ever the pragmatist, was torn between caution and curiosity, but Mike's empathy won out. He decided she could stay, just for the night, hidden away in the basement. He made her a makeshift bed, a fort of cushions and blankets, a small safe haven in a world that had clearly been anything but safe for her. As she changed into the dry clothes, the boys respectfully turning their backs, the basement lights began to flicker erratically. They buzzed and dimmed, then flared back to life, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. The boys looked up, confused, blaming the storm, but as the girl emerged, now dressed in Mike's clothes, the flickering intensified for a moment before settling. A strange coincidence, maybe, but a seed of unease was planted. There was something different about this girl, something more than just being scared and lost. Later, when Mike brought her some leftover pizza, she devoured it like she hadn't eaten in days. He tried again to communicate, asking her name. This time, she slowly raised her arm and pointed to the tattoo on her wrist. 11, she whispered, her voice fragile, barely audible. It was the first word she'd spoken, so that was her name. 11 a number. The night was filled with fragments of a nightmare. As 11 slept, her mind was anything but peaceful. Flashes of another place assaulted her. A cold, sterile laboratory. Men in white coats with detached, clinical eyes. A massive, glowing machine humming with a terrifying energy. She sees herself, younger, strapped to a chair, electrodes covering her shaved head. There are wires, needles, and the cold, metallic touch of instruments. A man with kind eyes but a cruel purpose, a man she calls Papa, watches her. He pushes her, demanding she use a power she barely understands. The memories are a torrent of fear and pain. She's crushing a soda can with her mind, the metal crumpling as if squeezed by an invisible hand. Her nose bleeds. Then the images get darker. She's in a sensory deprivation tank, floating in darkness, a conduit to somewhere else. She hears screaming, her own, and something else's, something monstrous. She wakes up with a silent gasp, the horrors of Hawkins' lab still clinging to her like a shroud. The real monster wasn't in the woods. It was the people who created her. The next morning, the search for Will Byers officially escalated. Police Chief Hopper, a man haunted by his own past tragedies, was now leading the effort. He interviewed Joyce Byers, Will's frantic mother. Her house was a chaotic mess of worry and ringing telephones. One call, however, was different. It was just static, a crackling, empty line. But through the noise, Joyce swore she heard something. A distorted, faint sound. Will's breathing. She screamed his name into the receiver, desperate for a response. But then the phone short-circuited with a violent spark, burning her hand. Everyone dismissed it as a power surge from the storm, a mother's grief playing tricks on her mind. But Joyce knew. She knew what she heard. It wasn't static. It was her boy trying to reach her from somewhere else. Meanwhile, back in the basement, Mike was trying to explain the situation to 11. He used their Dungeons & Dragons board as a visual aid, pointing to the miniature figure of Will. "He's lost," Mike explained. "We're looking for him." He pointed to the figures of himself, Dustin, and Lucas. Friends. Then he pointed to 11. He was trying to build a bridge, to show her she was with people who wanted to help. 11 stared at the board, her expression unreadable. Then, with a quiet intensity, she picked up the Will miniature. She looked at Mike, her eyes holding a deep, knowing sadness. She placed the figure down, and then she picked up another piece, the Demogorgon, the monster of their game. She placed it right next to Will's figure, then flipped the entire board upside down. The message was chillingly clear. Will wasn't just lost. He was taken by the monster. The boys looked at each other, a new kind of fear dawning on them. The silent, strange girl knew something. She knew what happened to Will, and the world they thought they knew, the safe, predictable world of Hawkins, Indiana, was about to be turned upside down, just like their game board. The girl in the woods wasn't just a lost kid. She was the key. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for the next part of the story.